Unmute பண்ணிருக்கேன் டாக்டர். Okay. Am I audible, doctor?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible. Good morning. Good morning. We have with us our vice principal, our medical superintendent, and Dr. Meghalai madam.
Good morning. Actually, ma'am, can you give
Dr.
me a
Meghalai.
ஷேர் பண்ணுமா டாக்டர் என்னோட ஸ்கிரீனு?
Good morning, madam.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Good morning to everyone.
Shall we start, madam?
Madam, we have with us our medical superintendent, vice principal.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning. Can I start, sir?
1 second, madam.
Okay.
1 second, introduction.
Okay, madam. At the outset, I would like to thank our chairman to they have given us an opportunity to exhibit our platform, to create a platform for our students as well as the faculty as well as the physicians of Salem to have
Good morning. Sir, கேக்குதா சார்?
given us
சார் கேக்குதா நான் பேசுறது?
given us this opportunity to share and exchange the knowledge. So fibroids has always been a fascinating subject. When I started as a student in the post graduation, we had a lot of instruments, especially the bony clamp and also this other things which are a little bit cumbersome, but at the same time it was a thing which was in its initial stages. But later on, as we progress, every decade there was something which has improved, either in the medical management or in the surgical management. So laparoscopy also started with its bang in doing fibroid surgeries. And as the laparoscopic surgeries progress, now we have in-back morcellation. They have got initially when they started doing laparoscopic surgeries, they used to give a vasopressin injection and had to do a very big surgery because of the wearing off of the injection. So later on, they started clamping the uterine arteries, gripping the uterine arteries as well as they were doing this. Of late, they are doing this shoelace knots, all those things. So at the medical management front also, initially there was this only GNRH and knots, but that was used only for a short period of time. And as the time progresses, we have a lot of this progesterone receptor modulators also, which are being used. So let us hear from Madam as to how it has improved over the period of time and what is basic to the management of fibroids. Sir, MS sir and DP Madam.
Good morning to all. Welcome, madam. I am Dr. Mohan Sarjan, medical superintendent of Annapurna Medical College. We are very happy that you are very well known great academician and senior most physician. It's a common fibroid topic. Our students and young budding physicians will be more benefited. On behalf of our administration, dean and vice principal, I wholeheartedly welcome you. This will be a good academic feast for everyone and budding physician in Salem also. Thank you, madam. Wish this webinar all success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good morning to one and all present. And I would like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Hexiba Krubamani, who is a professor at Savita Medical College, Chennai, to deliver a speech on recent advances in management of fibroids. Hope your lecture or webinar will enlighten all our CRRI students and all the physicians in the recent advances in the management of fibroids. And I would also like to congratulate the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology for arranging, though it is a very common topic, the recent advances should be known to the young doctors who are coming up. So I congratulate the department for arranging such a webinar with an excellent speaker today. So I wish this webinar a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. And I would request Dr. Sujata to introduce the speaker. Madam is well known among all the obstetric circles. So she's I've been seeing her since my PG days. Though I was not directly tutored under her, I used to go to her lectures during when I was in Chennai, and I could see her in every of the All India conferences. She was a national faculty in all the All India conferences. Even if I skip a conference, I would definitely have seen her name in all the brochures. And right now, she is the president of Chennai Menopause Society. Very recently, she took over as the president of Chennai Menopause Society. Over to you, Madam Dr. Sujata.
Hello, a very good morning to all of you. It's my proud privilege to be introducing the guest speaker, Professor Hepzibah Kirubamani, the guest speaker, former superintendent and professor, Stanley Medical College, now professor at Savitha University. She was a past president of Obstetric Gynec Society of Southern India, president of Chennai Menopause Society, the past Indian Menopause Society Education Committee chairperson, research member secretary, Savitha University. She is interested in awareness programs, conducts many awareness programs for Tamil Nadu medical staff, schools and colleges. She has presented and published many papers in Index Journal and is a reviewer for IJST as a PhD guide for SRMC, Savitha and SRM. She has got many feathers in her cap. She has been awarded Lifetime Achievement Award, Tamil Nadu Dr. MGR University 2012, Lifetime Achievement Award, Foxy 2015, Teacher Award, Stanley Medical College 2016, has been conferred Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Award 2017, and the Best Scientist Award 2018 has been bestowed Excellent Specialist Award from Tamil Nadu Medical Council, received from Honorable Tamil Nadu Governor 2018, Academic Award, State IMA 2019, the Best Faculty Award 2020-21, has developed Midlife and Beyond app for IMS and written various textbooks, which is, they're also being followed by our students, namely the video embedded undergraduate manual of clinical obstetrics and handbook on ultrasound training for MBBS doctors, Foxy Focus, endometriosis and menopause. I call upon Madam Dr. Hepzibah Kirubamani to take over. Thank you.
Madam?
Yeah, somebody has to stop the screen sharing, no? Yeah, at the outset, Can you able to see my slides, Doctor?
Yes, ma'am. You can see your
You can
slides.
go for screen.
Yeah, at the outset, I thank the chairman of Annapurna Medical College, the medical student, the dean, the dear faculty and the dear students. A special word of thanks to Dr. Saravana Kumar for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts about uterine fibroids. Actually, this is actually right from basics, a little bit advances I have included because most of the students should be benefited. That was my concept. So it is not purely advanced, but little bit I have added. So uterine fibroids, so it's the most common benign neoplasm of the uterus, and it is traditionally we do symptomatic fibroids till we do a myomectomy or hysterectomy we are performing. It's very common among gynec population. So 25% of the women during lifetime, they will have fibroids. And many times it is multiple, various size we have encountered, 3.5 pounds we have removed. And the genetic predisposition now it is thought about, and the genetic therapy is evolving, and it's more common in certain race groups, especially in Nigeria. It's very, very common. More common in obese because estrogen dependent, less common in smokers. We really do not know what is the relationship. More common in nulliparous and accounts for 30% of total hysterectomies. When we look at the natural history of fibroid, it is very rarely seen before menarche. Adolescent age group, we don't come across. Since it is estrogen dependent, it goes slowly in premenopausal, and probably while they are on contraceptive, when they're taking an MHT. So during menopause, it regresses, and response to progesterone only contraception is uncertain. Malignant changes also is very rare. So when we look at the locations, it can be a subserous when it is project from the uterus, submucous, different types of submucous fibroids are there. Depending upon this, they are graded. It can be pedunculated or sessile and intramural within the muscle. And cervical fibroid, it's very, very troublesome. It can be anterior, posterior, or central. And similarly, broad ligament hematoma, it can be either a true or false. True arising from smooth muscles in the broad ligament, and false, it arises from uterus and projecting into the broad ligament here. It is very important when we do an operation, the displacement of the ureter is in false. So these are all the pictures you can see. It is an intramural fibroid. You can see it is in the musculature. So it's a very huge fibroid, where very often we get huge fibroids, and once it becomes an abdominal organ, they come to us. Here, the uterus is there. It is outside the uterus, submucous, subserous fibroid. Here also you can see sometimes the pedicle also is broad. And on contrary, we can have a uniformly enlarged uterus also. So this is a submucous fibroid inside the cavity. So this is a central cervical fibroid, you can see. So FIGOs are classified that depending upon the location, whether it's a pedunculated, whether it is a 50% intramural, less than 50%, like that. For a PG, they should know, because based on that hysteroscopic operations, it's very useful for that. So it can undergo secondary changes, hyaline degeneration. So it becomes gelatinous, cystic changes can happen, calcification, and it can undergo infection, necrosis, and sometimes sepsis. And we may have to do emergency hysterectomy also when there is an intense sepsis. And atrophic changes and vascular changes also can happen, lymphangiectasis, telangiectasis, and rarely sarcomatous changes can happen. One of our cases has the myxoid degeneration, you can see very well, and calcified fibroid. Can be a calcified single fibroid. So coming to the fibroid, as we all know, 20% of them are asymptomatic, and menorrhagia, the heavy menstrual period, is very, very common and leading to iron deficiency anemia. When it is huge, it causes pressure symptoms and frequency of micturition. In addition, they can come to you with an acute pain or a chronic pain abdomen, infertility, and irregular vaginal bleeding also. When we look at the causes for abnormal bleeding, heavy menstrual bleeding, why should she bleed? It is due to the increased endometrial surface. When the surface is increased, naturally the vascularity increases, congestion is there, and the uterine interference with uterine contractility. When it is huge, the uterine contractility is altered. Associated hyperestrogenic condition, there is an imbalance between prostaglandin and thromboxane. Associated endometrial hyperplasia, associated endometriosis, pelvic inflammatory disease, all put together can have a heavy menstrual period. Similarly, why should they go for infertility? As I told you, it can be combined with endometriosis, which is the commonest cause for anovulation, pelvic inflammatory disease. So the tubal motility, everything is altered. The tubal block, that can be a carnival fibroid, and submucous fibroid interferes with the implantation due to endometrial thickening and poor vascularization, cervical fibroid prevents ascent of sperm. And they can have pressure symptoms in a huge fibroid, can lead on to hydronephrosis. When it is incarcerated into the pouch of Douglas, it can cause retention of urine. So I told you the patient can come with pain abdomen. So the torsion of the pedunculated fibroid can cause vascular occlusion and necrosis, infection, and acute pain. And myometrial contraction, when there is a submucous myoma, it's tried to expel. Because of the myometrial contraction, they can have a cramp-like pain. Red degeneration during pregnancy causes acute pain. If the tumor gets impacted in the pelvis, they feel heavy and pain in the pelvic area. Sometimes it radiates to lower extremities. When it gets impacted in the pouch of Douglas, it causes retention of urine. If it is protruding to vagina, it can cause dyspareunia. So, like any other case, we have to go for systematic physical examination. In a general examination, patient may be pale due to prolonged heavy menstrual bleeding. Patient can come to us a mass from the pelvis. It can be firm or irregular, and cervix may be in normal situation or be displaced, and there can be a fibroid polyp. And one thing we have to remove, differentiate from ovarian mass. When the movement of cervix is transmitted, it is transmitted to the mass in the abdomen. That's a groove sign is absent. So coming to the laboratory findings, due to the anemia, microcytic anemia may be present. Sometimes the erythrocytosis due to pressure on the ureters that can cause rarely the erythrocytosis and polycythemia. Acute degeneration in infection during that period, there will be increased ESR and leukocytosis, even fever, they can come to that. So the best non-invasive method to find out whether there is a fibroid or an ovarian mass, it is an ultrasound. So we can find out the size, the situation, and number of fibroids, whether it is 50% in the intramural or abating with the endometrial cavity, everything with a simple ultrasound we can find out. Sometimes we may have to resort MRI and CT. It is very rarely we have to do it. So sometimes when they come for infertility, we have to combine with hysterolaparoscope and saline hysteroscope. We can make out the pedunculated submucous fibroid. So this is the thing, saline sonography. So you can see the fluid going into the saline. So after injecting the saline, you can see very well the polyp. Before that, this is the appearance. So we can delineate. That is the use of saline sonography. So the fibroid can find out the situation. See here very nicely, we can see the entire uterus is filled with submucous fibroid. So hysteroscope also can be helpful. So depending upon the content of the fibrous tissue and calcification, the ultrasound picture can vary. Here you can see a heterogeneous mass. Here you can see because some degenerative changes, it is not heterogeneous. Subserous fibroid you can see. Here again the subserosal fibroid, you can see some degeneration is there. So depending upon the fibrous content and calcification, it can be a heterogeneous or a homogeneous or hyperechoic. Sometimes very solid mass we can see, and aquastic shadowing can be seen. That is a clue for fibroid. So this is the infertility patient who had a posterior fibroid. So MRI and fibroid very rarely we use, but still sometimes it is very, very useful for mapping the fibroid. So coming to the differential diagnosis, first and foremost, previously when we were students, the first thing we used to rule out is the pregnancy. Now there are, with an ultrasound, very quickly we can make out. So the other causes for ovarian cancer, tubo-ovarian abscess, endometriosis, adhesions, adnexal, omental, bowel adhesion can simulate like that. Presacral tumors also can simulate like fibroid. And another uterine enlargement, other causes for uterine enlargement, we should think about it. Adenomyosis, myometrial hypertrophy, the 10 to 12 weeks, it's difficult to differentiate. Congenital anomalies leading on to hematometra, pyometra, and endometrial carcinoma. So this is the thing we had got during a, we thought it is fibroid, we didn't do MRI, but it turned out to be a schwannoma, the pelvic region. So coming to the treatment, it is highly individualized. The therapy is depending upon so many factors. So ultrasound, the treatment we can, I told you, to map out ultrasound, it's very useful. Sometimes we have to resort to MRI also. It can be a pharmacological treatment. It can be laparoscopic, hysteroscopic, and robotic. And of course, the traditional myomectomy, hysterectomy still plays a role, major role. So it depends upon the age, parity, pregnancy status, desire for future pregnancy, general health, symptoms, size, and location. Most of them, I told you before, 20% are asymptomatic, so they do not require any treatment. So coming to the medical option, these are all the GnRH analog, danazol, selective progesterone regulator, anastrozole, and LNG IUCD, Mirena can be used. Hysterectomy, myomectomy, hysteroscopic resection, uterine artery embolization, MRI guided HIFU. So the medical management, when will we do it? To control bleeding and women approaching menopause. In perimenopause and menopause, it may regress. Sometimes we have to shrink the fibroid preoperatively so that it can be, suppose if it is 16 weeks, we can shrink it and even do with a trial of vaginal hysterectomy aspect without prolapse. Women who wants to postpone for surgery for some time, these are all the indications for medical treatment. So the GnRH agonist have been used, but it is very costly. It takes 3 months to minimize its size to 50%. And when we use it for longer time, more than 3 to 6 months, they go for menopausal symptom because it causes osteoporosis. We have to add bacteria. So that's, as I already told you, it will reduce the size, so we can attempt vaginal hysterectomy and laparoscopic very easily. And contraindication is when there is a polypoid submucous type, we cannot use the GnRH. And disadvantage, when we use GnRH and when we operate, small fibroids will not be seen. It is shrunken. So they may regrow after the surgery. That is the major disadvantage. Selective progesterone modulator came in a very big way, but now it can cause endometrial thickening. Now recently, because of liver toxicity, it has been banned. So coming to the surgical management, this to preserve a reproductive function, when the patient wants a reproductive function to be maintained, we have to resort to myomectomy. So when there is a pressure symptom, size more than 12 weeks, rapidly growing, recurrent pregnancy loss due to submucous fibroid, we can go for myomectomy. But word of caution, before that, we have to have an informed consent for hysterectomy. So coming to the procedures, it should be done in pre-ovulatory period. Other causes, if you are doing it for infertility case, we have to rule out the other causes for infertility and may also to be investigated. Prior endometrial biopsy to rule out malignancy. Sufficient blood should be available. Myoma is removed actually by, see here you can see we have enucleated, the dead space is obliterated. The complications will be infections, risk of hysterectomy, risk of injury to the adjacent organs. Long term will be adhesions and recurrence, scar rupture during labor. So this is a video clipping of myomectomy. We started doing enucleation with the myoma screw, and we may have to dissect out the surrounding plate from the uterus. So myoma screw is only to grip. Before that, to reduce the bleeding, we can give vasopressin or something like that. So we may have to lever out from the uterine surface. So we have to have a dissection in between the myoma and the uterus, and we have to slowly manipulate the myoma. So this is how we have to dissect out. Sometimes we have to cut, and sometimes we can lever it, and we can do it with the fingers also. And with the advent of cautery and other things, the bleeding is very, very less. So the myoma is coming out slowly. Okay. So after that, we have to put what layers of suture in the, see, this is the dead space. We have to obliterate with the layers of sutures so that the cavity is maintained and the dead space is obliterated so that the hemorrhage is very less. We have to do a layer of dead space is obliterating. No. So by putting the tiers of sutures, we will be obliterating the dead space, and it may require 1 or 2 layers also. So to obliterate this thing. So yeah, this is how it will be. That 1 layer is over, the 2nd layer we are trying to do it. So the same thing can be done in laparoscope also. So it's a case of cervical cancer, the same. So this is, you can see a submucous fibroid here. So this is through a hysteroscopic myomectomy we can. I think this video is not working. Okay, that video, I think there is something has happened. So through hysteroscopy, we can remove the myoma, submucous myoma. That next thing, actually it is diagnostic, and here, okay, it's not working. Okay. So hysterectomy is indicated when it is completed, when the family is completed, and growth of fibroid after menopause. It's not going to shrink. When malignancy is suspected, when the myoma gets infected. So what will we do in fibroid and pregnancy? What is its effect? In most women, there is no effect at all. It can remain unchanged, but rarely undergo rapid growth and red degeneration. And it can go for preterm delivery, but abnormal presentation is more common. Sometimes it can have an intrauterine growth restriction, placental abruption, uterine inertia, and postnatally they can go for postpartum hemorrhage. Myomectomy is now advised during cesarean section, but we have to take a pinch of salt because it can end up in sometime cesarean hysterectomy, but we can do myomectomy during cesarean section. So why should they go for red degeneration? And we should think it can mimic acute abdomen, can cause pain and tenderness. It is due to the rapid increase in vascular deprivation and degeneration and thrombosis, the red deep appearance. That's why it is called, it can cause red deep appearance of the fibroid. So it should be managed conservatively with bed rest, narcotics, and prophylaxis, very, very rarely indicated. After the acute phase, the pregnancy will definitely continue to turn. So that can come as a short notes for final years. So sometime emergency surgery can be done in fibroid. When they come with a torsion, with acute pain, when there is a massive intraperitoneal hemorrhage due to rupture of veins over fibroid, when there is an uncontrolled heavy menstrual bleeding, and when there is a massive sepsis, usually When they go for uterine artery embolization, it takes a little longer time to undergo necrosis. Sometimes it gets infected. So whenever the patient goes for uterine artery embolization, she should be prepared for hysterectomy also. So fibroid can be managed without resorting surgery also. So we have the uterine artery embolization, which is least invasive, and MRI guided focused ultrasound, which is non-invasive. From surgical, it has been minimally invasive, surgery, minimally invasive, now less invasive, non-invasive. It has gone. So what is uterine artery embolization? And it can be done under local anesthesia. A catheter is introduced into the femoral artery and advanced under radiographic control into uterine artery. From femoral artery, they will be introducing the catheter into the uterine artery, and they will be injecting microparticles like beads or spears and released, which will block the vessel. But uterus will not undergo anything because of the collateral circulation. And the procedure takes only 1 hour, and it is not a surgical intervention. Uterus to be kept in place. The patient can be, these are all the particles which they introduce, can be discharged after 24 hours. So only thing they require, patient require radiation exposure. Immediately after end of the procedure, most patients experience moderate to severe ischemic pain for 12 hours. And usually parenteral analgesia is enough for them. The recovery is very, very fast, and it is cramping is the one which is giving a problem. And after embolization, they may have a malaise, fatigue, nausea, and low-grade fever. Very rarely, the people have reported the sepsis. Patient can usually return to normal activities within a couple of days. So this is the procedure which I was talking to you. No scar, just a band-aid. From surgery, it has come to a non-invasive. So this is how it can be seen post-embolization angiogram. So Dr. George Bush secretary, the president, American president secretary, underwent, and she rejoined, and the fibroid embolization had on Friday. She was back to work on Monday. So more and more women nowadays demanding non-surgical approach, especially when they are in an executive type of work. So this is another not at all invasive focused ultrasound for uterine fibroids. So she gets into that. Highly intense focused ultrasound transducer is on the tabletop of the MRI, and treatment is performed under conscious sedation, targeting done using MRI images. The sonification was done, and the monitored throughout the amount of thermal thing is by the thermometer, MRI thermometer. The tissue is destroyed, and she can walk after the procedure. So this is how it is seen. So coming to the gene therapy, when we induce apoptosis, a mechanism, it is going to shrink. But through both intrinsic and extrinsic pathway, we should approach. So similarly, the gene therapy, they have started to induce apoptosis. The main recent evidence, the gene involved is P14. So the P14 and MDM2 is another oncoprotein which will increase the P14 gene. So which will govern the fate of the fibroid. If it influences, then it grows. But there is an antidote for that MDM2 oncoprotein, mutilin 3, which will antagonize, and it is thus oppose the proliferative activity of P54. Apoptosis is induced in cell cultures. So the gene therapy is becoming a clinical reality with more than 600 clinical trials world over they have done. Their further work on rat models will pave a big way for a future glioma gene therapy. So in everyday clinical practice, majority of women with symptomatic fibroids are still managed by traditional surgery, and alternative treatments fail to change substantially the practice. That is, so the Victor Bonney has removed fibroids, and in 1930, myomectomy was done. And Stephen Quinn, he holds the training in Northwest Clinical Research Fellow. He undertakes research on uterine fibroids. He is the first to start MRI guided HIFU in 2003. But still we need to have a long-term data. It's all very interesting. It is practiced, but now the long-term data is lacking. That's why we are again resort to the old surgical methods. So to conclude, the challenges are what makes life interesting. Overcome them is what makes life meaningful. So choosing the best management of fibroid is an ongoing challenge, but interesting to manage symptomatic fibroid and relieve the agony. Thank you for patient listening.
When this unit Mr. Estate was launched, many of the representatives came us to tell that it is a wonderful way to treat the fibroid. But then, again, after 6 months, it went into disrepute. So, the traditional method is still followed by majority of the institutes and practitioners. And we should see how any other treatment modality is going to evolve in another 5 to 10 years. Thank you, madam. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
I think your voice is not heard, madam.
I'm your student, ma'am. Megali, ma'am. Salem.
Megali, madam, is your student. Actually, my wife is also your student. She used to.
Is it a Megali that's sitting?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the voice is very, very low.
Ma'am, we have a student here also, ma'am.
Thank you.
I am also a student, ma'am.
Thank you. Nice to see. See, when we see our children growing, no, there is a Tamil saying, "Inda poludin peridurappa tanmaganai saandor ena ketattai." So when you are doing good work, we get reflected glory, no? We didn't contribute anything. We get the, what can I say, glory. That's called reflected glory. So all of you are doing good job. I have not gone into the depth because most of them will be final year students. That's what I heard from Dr. Sujata, because they are all now try to do uterine artery clamping from transvaginal. There are a lot of new techniques they are developing. If it is for PG, I could have included all those things. For undergraduate, if we go and tell all those things, they will be talking that only in the exam, and basic things they will forget. So I have reduced it to a very minimal thing. And I thought I should show some videos so that they will have better visual impact. Nice to see our old people. So continue to do good job.
Vote of thanks by Dr. Karthi.
Pardon?
There's a vote of thanks by Dr. Karthi Chandran, our other assistant professor.
Very good morning to all. It gives me immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks. On the behalf of the Obstetrics and Gynecology Department, Annapurna Medical College, I thank our chairman, J.S. Satish Kumar, our beloved dean, Professor Dr. T. Shanmugam, our vice principal, Professor B. Usha, our MS, Professor Dr. N. Mohan, and our DMS, Professor Dr. Prasanna Babu, for encouraging us and providing all the necessary support. I thank our HOD, Dr. N. Saravanan Kumar, for enabling this program. At the last, I would like to thank our beloved Madam Hepzibah for her wonderful and innovative talk. I thank Panchamcharam for the technical support, and also would like to extend my thanks to all those who have made this program a success. I would like all of you to join us for the national anthem.
Thank you.
You have to get up, no?